And we are starting to record now. So welcome to the 2020 Grant Information and Writing Workshop. My name is Dr. Michael McCabe, and I am the Wisconsin Charter Schools Program Grant Project Manager. All that to say is I help to manage this grant that we have that you're here to learn more about today. And with the department, I am joined by Diane Schwartz. Diane, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, Diane Schwartz here. I'm the education specialist and I work on the charter school team. And I'm grateful to be here, glad to be here to help support schools getting in their applications this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Diane. And Nick, did you want to go ahead and say hello?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Know many of you on the call so far today, so great to see you. And I'm excited to support you in your journeys in strategizing schools and thinking through that. So thanks, Michael, for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And thank you for co-presenting with us, Nick. I just want to take a moment before I get out of the title slide to explain what the Wisconsin Resource Center for Charter Schools is. And because it's newer, it's a part of this grant. And so Nick is the assistant director or associate director. I wasn't sure on the title, so I guessed and grabbed assistant. And the director is Sarah Hackett. And for those of you who've been in the charter world before or previously, you know Nick and Sarah, previous school leaders and school developers who just do a fantastic job of running and have developed works from the ground up. And the Wisconsin Resource Charter Center, which I continue to butcher, and so I'll call works from here on out, was actually started out of the grant funds that we currently have right now. So if you're brand new, and I mean brand new to the charter world, so new that you said, I'm going to go to the second workshop, not the first workshop. I'm going to try to just hide in there. The good news is that there's a resource center that's here to provide you with additional technical assistance that you otherwise would not have had. So the Wisconsin Charter Schools program is fully financed by a $95 million federal grant from the U.S. Department of Education. And we are in year 4 of that this year. We just started year 4. Diane, this is you.
All right, so welcome everybody. So for today's agenda, I'll go over that briefly. We're gonna have a basic charter schools overview, a federal grant overview. We'll go over basic grant requirements, allowable costs. We'll go over what's on the application briefly. We'll give you a review of the grant process, what it takes, the deadlines, when we grant awards. And then we will have additional information about technical assistance and the requirements to access funds. So today I've already put in the chat, I put in the chat an evaluation form. We really appreciate it if you fill out the evaluation form. So be thinking about this presentation, how we can improve it. We do look at these surveys when we assess how to do the workshops in the future. And when you fill out the survey, please include the video that we also had you listen to as part of this presentation's homework. So I did put the link to the evaluation in the chat box now, and I will also put it in again at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to appreciate and thank you for filling that out in advance.
And the feedback we got from the first presentation was very helpful for today. We were actually able to add a slide and I think get you guys better and more concise answers for some of the pieces that are unique to this grant. So again, just thank you for that, taking the time to do that.
All right, so the details for today, we'll give you a timeline of the grant, any changes from the grant from last year, materials overview. There's quite a few appendices that is contained in this grant, some strategies for filling out the grant, We really don't have work time scheduled into this grant presentation, but we do have plenty of time for questions. And then we ask that you fill out the evaluation. The next slide shows our deadline. Everybody wants to know when the deadline is. This year it's Wednesday, February 17th, 2021, and we award tentatively in May or June of 2021. And we always keep that tentative because there's so many factors that go into that. And now I turn it over to Michael to go in some of the important changes that have taken place from last year to this year.
Thank you, Diane. That was outstanding. And the biggest change for this year's grant application, and again, if you're somebody who's written 3 or 4 grants before, or you're a successful school developer, I'm sorry, but you're not my primary target audience today. Today, my primary target audience is the person who's new to the charter world, or who's coming back into the scene after a while. And so if you could just hold on one moment, bad moments in presenting. Sorry about that. Also running a homeschool resource center out of my own house at the moment, and just had one of those moments there. My primary audience is for the people who are brand new. So if you're brand new coming into this, I'm going to really try to break things down into simple parts. And when you turn in the grant, there's a peer review process that is scored out of 50. And so you get multiple peer reviewers who review your grant application. And if it's 35 or higher, you're funded. And that's how it's been for a while. That's how it is in this one. 35 or higher, you're funded. And one piece that's unique to this grant compared to previous grants, all the funding happens at once. So there aren't multiple grant applications that you have to fill out. You fill out one grant application and you get funded, or you don't. And what we've instituted this year is an amended review process. And the language that's written on this slide is the same language that is also in our grant application. So you'll notice that if you score between a 30 to a 34, that automatically triggers an amended review process. Well, what does that mean? It means that the peer reviewers may have some questions, and there could be some back and forth with the school developer and the team. And you'd have 2 weeks to get those answers back to the peer reviewers. And that's where, when we say it's May to June-ish, this is a new process for us. So we will do everything we can to get the information back to you guys in a timely manner. But it's something that I think will benefit a lot of different school teams and people who just don't quite make that cut of scoring a 35. This is an opportunity to raise that score from a 34 to a 35, or a 33 to a 36. So that process is called amended review, and it is included in our grant application for the first time this year. Nick or Diane, was that clear enough? I know I had a little
Sounds good to me.
4K interruption there for a moment. And then for this year, and when I went through this bullet points, the last slideshow, it created more questions than answers. So I do want to assure you that when we get to slide 22, and if you're here for expansion only, you can zoom right to 22 right now. We'll talk about expansion and replication later on. But for the purposes of what's new and overview of changes, because of COVID-19 and not having our state testing last year, the language that you see here is a language that's in the grant, and that's the type of language you'll get from me and my team if you were to email us and say, well, what should I use? Should I use Maps? Should I use iReady? Should I use STAR? Should I use this? Should I use that? That's the language that will be pushed right back to you. You want to just talk about the data that you used up until March 12th, 2020, when a state of emergency was declared. And I'll talk more about that later on in our slideshow as well. And then the third change that's different for the grant this year. All grants are turned in digitally to the email address there. So by 4:30 on Wednesday, February 17th, you need to email charterschools@dpi.wi.gov your entire grant application. And anyone who's written in the past, you'll know why that's different, right? Because in the past you had to turn in, 4 of them in person. And so that's an overview of the changes. And before I just zip past this slide, I want to welcome Sarah Hackett from Works. She's the director of Works, and you'll be hearing more from Sarah here as we get going.
Great, thanks. Yeah, sorry I'm late.
No, you're good. You're good. Thanks for being here, Sarah. And Diane, back to you for this slide.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So what does an application consist of? Now on our website, everything is available. We have the application instructions and the application itself. And then we have a host of related materials. There's a technical review document. That's a document that we use when applications come in to make sure that everything is there. Do you have your letters of recommendation? We go through that just to make sure that all the pieces are in place. So you want to look at that and make sure that you have all those pieces in place before you send us your document. The reviewer benchmarks are there. These are the benchmarks that our reviewers use to grade your grant application. The sub-grant application rating guide, again, this is what our reviewers use to rate your application. The contract benchmarks are there. This is for new schools who are in the process of either developing their contracts or schools that maybe are revising their contracts. These are the benchmarks that all contracts must meet in order to become a charter school in Wisconsin. Technical assistance requirements are also listed. Those are the Works technical assistance requirements that you'll hear more about later from Sarah and Nick. And then there's also a form called an assurance of readiness that school authorizers need to fill out before a new school can open. And so what is it that we need to see from you? We need to see, in addition to that application, a grant narrative that is numbered. It is not more than 25 pages and meets all the formatting requirements that are listed on page 5 of the instructions that we're not going to go into today. And you want to combine all of the components for the application into one document that's all the 25-page application, the grant narrative, the application, all the appendices, put it into one PDF, name it school name _APP, and send it to charterschools@dpi.wi.gov by the deadline. And then we also ask that you email the individual components of the application. This is because sometimes we just need to look at a budget and we just need to see the budget and not have to wade through the entire application that you're going to send us. And we give you exactly what to name each file. So if you could just name everything exactly what it says here on your application, and notice that appendices G, H, and I are only for expansion and replication grants. So these are all of the application, the narrative. It's all laid out very clearly by appendices for you to fill out. And for those of you who are concerned about the size of files, we've had people who've had to break up their application into 2 emails. That's perfectly okay. If your files become too big and the server won't let you send them, please go ahead and split them up and just let us know. We'll be ready at 4:30 on February 17th, ready to receive your applications.
Awesome. Thanks, Diane. All right, so what I'm going to do now, folks, I'm going to break down the grant. So all of these pieces that are mentioned here in the materials checklist, I'm going to go over those and really try to frame and outline what some of those components are. Okay, so this workshop that's being provided today, it's called technical assistance. So I am providing technical assistance for the grant, and I can do this with you or your school team any day out of the week. That's my job. So if I start talking fast, if I start becoming unclear, or if this just becomes daunting, or if you have some detailed and nuanced questions to your unique situation, you just buzz me an email and we'll hop on a call. We use Microsoft Teams at the department and we'll go through your unique situation. I cannot provide the type of technical assistance where I tell you what you should write in your grant. That's a part that I cannot do for my job. But in terms of helping you to frame, where you're at in your situation, those are the types of conversations that we do provide and have. So I wanted to just clearly articulate that before getting into this next section. So Grant Narrative Appendix A. It's made up of 5 chapters, unless you are an expansion or a replication school, then you have 2 extra chapters, but they're small, and we'll get into that more in about 10 slides from now. And so these are the different chapters of your grant. And I'm going to go through now and break down each one of those. So section 1, this is all the mission, vision, and values of your new school. All right. I made a comment in jest earlier about running a homeschool resource center right now because my kiddos are doing school virtually from home upstairs. But you're starting a charter school. That means something. It's guided by our state statutes. And we want to hear about how you are doing the different things that are outlined in the next few slides in this section. And there's a document we're going to show in a few slides from now called the reviewer benchmarks. And if you look at the benchmarks, you're going to see everything that your grant application is rated on. So here are the focuses of this grant. Are you increasing access to educationally disadvantaged students? You need to be doing at least 2 of those 5 components, all right? Reducing and eliminating the achievement gap for educationally disadvantaged students, serving students at risk of dropping out or who have previously dropped out, increasing the overall graduation rate, increasing career and college readiness. So when you describe your program and your community need and your mission, vision, and values, you want to make sure that you're not just touching on these, but really shedding light and explaining so that the peer reviewers can see how your school is going to address at least 2 of those 5 components. Then we get into the describing part. You need to describe the model, how it promotes a diversity of options and is responsive to students most in need, and also how the school will take advantage of autonomy and flexibility afforded to charter schools. You need to describe the planning process, all right? And we're going to get more into that as we get going here, but planning is an actual phase in this grant. Planning starts July 1 and ends June 30th, the year before you open with kiddos. Not all schools have a planning period, but planning is an actual thing that needs to be explained in this grant. And there's a clear process for doing that. And then describe the community served and the level of extent of family and community support. And we know that this varies. Sometimes if you have a school leader who wakes up in the middle of the night and they want to start a new charter school, their level of community support will be very different than a group of parents who get together and want to start a charter school. But you need to describe the community served and then the level and extent to which family and community support has already happened. And then this last part is one that I think people do in the grant, and then I'm going to insert my personal opinion here, but then people tend to kind of forget about until the school's opened. But you have to give a projected enrollment and grades served for each year of the grant. And you need to disaggregate the data by ethnicity, race, and by educationally disadvantaged subgroups. First part is a projection until you're actually open. And then you'll have the data right out of WiseDash. You can just go back there and get it. So that's section 1. That's 1/5 of your grant. And that's section 1. Into section 2, so you've got your mission, vision, and values and what you're thinking. Now what are you going to do? And section 2 are your proposed activities. And you really need to describe the activities that you plan to complete under the grant, how the different stakeholders are going to be involved. Most schools do go for 5 years in the grant. I say most because everybody's in a little bit different situation. But you'll describe the activities that will be carried out over that 5-year period. Describe how student achievement will be measured each year. How are you going to do that? And then you will identify 4 to 10 performance measures, which we're going to talk more about in a little bit. And we're very fortunate we have a performance measure guru as a co-presenter today, Nick Protaski, who's very humble and shaking his head up there right now because he doesn't like any sort of praise. We'll be explaining performance measures and details and talking about the good work that the Wisconsin Charter School Resource Center has done in developing performance measures unique to your small schools. And you'll want to describe that in your grant. And then you're going to share how the school will share best practices and promising practices. For our friends who are in instrumentalities, meaning the school district is authorizing the school, a lot of times that will be what we'll see and what has worked in the past. How is your school going to help to inform practices for your district and surrounding districts? And for our independent school friends, those schools who have an independent authorizer, so an authorizer who's not a school district, a lot of times they will be talking about how they are sharing best practices unique to their method or model of education. And then how are you going to use the grant money? Just a general overview here in chapter 2 and how that's tied to the activities. You're going, section 3 is all about governance. In governance and autonomy. And I did a little film study. I reviewed the film from the first grant workshop, and this was an area where I thought I did just exceptionally below the bar. I did not hit the mark. So I'm going to stick to the slide here and really go through bullet point by bullet point. But please, if you have questions, ask them in the chat box. And when we get to the question section, we're going to answer all of them, just so we can kind of stay organized and stay to our framework that we have today. All right, so this section 3 for governance and autonomy. So you need to describe how the authorizer will monitor performance and compliance with the contract and will reserve the right to revoke or not renew the school's charter. So right now you are potentially, but you're applying for a grant. And let's go down the happy scenario that you get funded. Yay, you get funded, you find out in June. From June through the following December and January, but you are developing a contract with your authorizer. And so in this grant, you want to really forecast and speculate. And if you've done this work already, maybe you have a full year or 2 of pre-planning and you've done a lot of the work, you want to describe how your authorizer is going to monitor your performance and compliance with the contract. And then the right to reserve and revoke it as well. Most charter contracts are on a 5-year renewal cycle. And then if applicable, you want to submit a request and justification for waivers of any federal statutory or regulatory provisions. One example of that, we do have some schools who may not participate in the school lunch program. So they would need to submit a request and justification for that waiver with this grant. That's one example that has been done in the past. You need to provide information about governance board membership and operations. You need to describe the board's level of autonomy. You need to describe the administrative relationship between the school and the authorizer. Describe how the school will solicit and consider input from stakeholders. I think a lot of people have, how are you going to survey the people that you're serving? But you need to describe how you're going to do that. And you need to describe the roles and responsibilities of the school, and if applicable, any potential partners and or charter management organizations. So governance and autonomy, I know, is one where there are a lot of questions, and I don't want to go too much deeper, but I am going to rely on Diane, Sarah, or Nick if you think that one needs more explanation, or if I should just keep moving here. Thumbs up, or talk a little bit about what a governance board is. Thumbs up, good.
Keep
I would
going.
just recommend if
Awesome.
anyone's,
Go, Sarah.
I would just recommend if anyone's new to this, like if you're a new authorizer or forming a new governance board and your design team's kind of starting to go through those steps, I would absolutely encourage you to reach out to Nick or I, and we can walk you through that, like literally walk you through the legal processes of establishing your governance board, and then also talk through the best practices for both governance and authorizing. So that's something we spend a lot of time on. You know, Michael's right, this needs a lot of attention. So please do reach out.
And I guess the only addition to that is in our governance over our charter schools is a critical piece to the success of your charter school. And so you want to be thinking through that as you're applying for a grant. How are you making sure your governance board is becoming more effective every single year? Because just like school leadership, you know, our leaders need to get better, so does our governance board. And do you have a continuous improvement plan for your governing body as well?
All right, equal access. This is a big one, ladies and gentlemen, and one where a lot of teams do put in a lot of work. I mean, several months of work to really get these answers hammered out. It's section 4 of your application in Appendix A. So Appendix A is all your narrative. That's what's 25 pages or less. You need to provide a description of how the school assures equal access. All means all. I cannot be more clearer than that. Okay, dramatic pause for effect. So you need to talk about an application where every single kid who applies can apply. We don't want to see interviews. We don't want to see interest inventories. We don't want to see all those things that in year 2 and 3, when we're out and about monitoring, we have to tell people they can't do. And I'm not going to apologize for my tone. It's that clear. All means all. If there's a kid who wants to come to your charter school, they need to be able to apply. And we struggle with that one quite a bit in terms of looking out across the state. And so need to provide a description of how your school assures equal access. Need to provide the school's General Education Provisions Act plan or statement. You need to describe how the school plans to attract, recruit, admit, enroll, serve, and retain educationally disadvantaged students equitably and inclusively. You need to describe how the school plans to recruit and retain a diverse staff. And this is one, I want to also provide some assistance and hope here. If you're fortunate to get funded, we do monthly calls where the technical assistance continues and we keep moving forward and providing training and outreach. And with our latest group of folks who were just funded, so they're cohort 3, they received notice that they were funded this past summer, and many of them are in planning. This was a major topic of our conversation last Thursday on our monthly call, talking about how do we operationalize what we wrote in our grant? How do we actually recruit a diverse staff? And so it's for all of these pieces, you just need to describe what you're doing and really put out your plan and know that going forward, we're going to be here to help monitor and provide the assistance so that you can carry out your plan. Provide a description of how students are informed of the school and given equal opportunity to attend. Describe how the school will meet the educational needs of all its students, including children with disabilities and English language learners. All right, then when we get into section 5 is all about the budget. And for those of you who've written a grant in the past, I mean, even going back to like circa 2009, 10, and 11, section 5 has not changed a whole lot. You need to have a 5-year projection, your explanation of the cost and justifying how the costs relate to opening and preparing for the operation of a new or expanded school. Is it reasonable? Is it necessary? Is it a one-time cost to open your school? So section 5 is something where I feel like we have a lot of really good answers to the common questions that come up. And it's one that can be very daunting especially if you're coming into this as a teacher or a school leader or a board member, and whoa, what's going on with this budget? There's a way to get you the answers that you need so that you can get all the forms turned around and brought back. The one thing that I will say is that you need to really describe, though, I'm looking at bullet point 3, the methods by which controls over expenditures and records of expenditures will be maintained. One piece that is newer this grant go around is the Federal Uniform Grant Guidance has very, very, very clear processes and protocols on what's allowable and not allowable and what policies you need. And so that's where you have the benefit of coming into this with 3 groups that have gone before, because we're able to tell you, no, you need to have an equipment policy. You need to have a policy for conducting inventory. Just some of those pieces other schools have, and we can get out to you, or our friends at Works can as well. So we're going to get into 2 other sections that are somewhat unique, that meaning they're not for every school. So if you're getting ready to open a school, first time school, never been open before, you'll do sections 1 through 5. Okay. Section 6. This is for implementation grants only. So if you are not doing a planning year, if you want to open your school in the fall of 2021, you also need to fill out section 6. If you're doing a planning year, you don't need to fill out section 6. Okay? And I think you'll see why you need to do it if you just glance at a few of these bullet points. This is the work that gets done in planning. So if you're not going to do a planning year, we need to see it. We need to see it as a part of your grant application. The peer reviewers need to ensure that you are indeed ready to open up. And some people are. For some folks, maybe you were not successfully funded in a previous year, or maybe you've been in pre-planning for 3 or 4 years and your team has just come together and you're ready to go forward now. There's a lot of different reasons why implementation only makes sense. So if you are implementation only, you need to do section 6, okay? Section 7 is for replication and expansion. So these are 2 different things. And I am going to take a minute to distinguish between the 2 because I think that it will be helpful. So replication, it primarily is for our independent school friends. All right, if somebody has an independent authorizer, they are able to replicate and start a second school based on the successful school that is already running. So if Happy Kids School is the greatest school in I tried to be clever with a name of a town that doesn't exist in Wisconsin, but I'm not going to. If a Happy Kids School wants to replicate, they can go start Happy Kids School North or South, okay? So replication, we haven't seen many replication grants come in the course of this cycle, but I did want to explain what it is because it exists and it's possible. Expansion is where your school grows, okay? And we have an awesome slide that's going to be coming to you in about 2 or 3 slides, but this is the information that you need in section 7. So again, if you're having a planning year and you're a brand new school, don't worry about section 7. Okay, but for those who are in replication and expansion, I'm pretty sure you know who you are. You need to also fill out section 7, and you'll see the COVID-19 language that was mentioned earlier also in this section. All right, section 7, replication and expansion grants only. Again, that's just more details on what you need, but it has to be answered. If you have any significant compliance or management issues within the last 3 years, we need to know how they were resolved, because essentially you're going for additional grant funds to either increase your school size or start a second school. So these pieces must be addressed. All right. So here's how you're gonna, this is the slide that we added, and we added because expansion under this grant is different than other grants that the state has held in the past. So we want to take a moment and go over what qualifies for expansion. Sarah, Nick, Diane, please interrupt and jump in if I'm being unclear, or if my barking dog in the background is too loud and I just need to mute myself, or any of those things. But what qualifies for expansion? If you are adding a grade level, all right, you qualify for expansion. So let's say you're a 10th through 12th charter school and you're going to add 9th grade. You're qualified for expansion, you can write the expansion grant. That's one process. If you are expanding by a grade, adding at least one grade level in your first year of implementation, you can write the grant. You can also have a planning year, all right? So that's one process that would go down step 1 to step 2, all the way through here. I'm trending down the left here. There's also an option built into this grant called the slow growth model. And that is where you increase by 20% or 20 kids by the first year of your implementation, all right? So that would be an existing school that's looking to expand their student body for whatever reason. There could be a lot of reasons. I don't even want to enter the reasons here, but those are the two main methods of expansion underneath this round of WCSP grants. Okay. What else do you need? Appendix B. You are going to need some letters of support. I would start asking those for those right now from people. Here's why. Today is November 19th. From now until February 19th, what is on the calendar? Nothing but holidays and fun. It is go time in the schoolhouse. So if you need letters of support from school leaders, from district administrators, from board members, get that on their radar now. If you have community leaders, if you have people who serve on a myriad of nonprofits, you know those are busy folks. So you want to reach out to them right now and get those letters of support. Make sure they are signed, make sure they are dated, make sure their contact information is on there so that we can verify the authenticity of those letters. All right, and then we get into Appendix C. So I did have a great question that came into my inbox for Appendix B. Appendix B is truly just the letters. And so when you submit them in your application, you would just submit it as letter of support, McCabe, Appendix B. However the format is that Diane shared out with you, that's all that it is. You would just scan and send those in. All right, authorizer approval, Appendix C. So this one, I'm gonna basically read by the slide. Diane, is this one you? I saw that you jumped back on. This one's me still, right?
I'm the next one.
You're the next one, very good. Your authorizer approval must clearly state the school year, the grade span, and enrollment described in the application, and that it's approved. So Happy Kids Charter School, if you're a district with 120 kids, that's probably not that difficult. You go down, you see the district administrator, the superintendent, you get a signature. If Happy Kids Charter School is in a district with 23,000 kids, that could be a different process. There might be some subcommittees and some things that you need to navigate and get through. So please, please, please look at Appendix C. Look at your situation. If you are an instrumentality or an independent authorizer that you're seeking, you want to make sure that you get going on this now. It's not one of those fun things to take care of when February 15th rolls around and you're feeling good about your grant narrative. You want to start to take action on this one right now. And it's really just a letter of support where it's a form that has signatures with your authorizer's name on it. You are the next one. And Diane, I will be right back.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna move on to Appendix D, which is the performance measures. And performance measures is the method by which we evaluate your grant on a year-to-year basis. And we provide you with a form. And you must, if you're in a planning year, we request at least one performance measure for your planning year. You must use the chart provided, and at least one measure must relate to a nationally standardized test in reading and in math. Understand during COVID that might be a little bit challenging this year, but still include that. And we ask that you include 4 to 10 performance measures. We don't want any more than 10, and 3 is too few, so 4 to 10 will be an adequate number. Michael, are you there to change the slide? Okay, and we ask that, and we are going to get into a little bit more details about this. When we started the grant, we asked that you use SMART goals. These are specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-related goals. And if you can move to the next slide. Here's an example of a problematic performance measure. By the end of year 5, students will demonstrate mastery of Babcock, Massaro, and Spalding skills for the age of technology as measured by student portfolios, teacher conferences, and the BMS skills survey. It does not specify which students, it doesn't say which type of, of assessments are going to be used. And so it's not an adequate performance measure. And we will probably ask you, if you get the grant, then you will have to rewrite your performance measures or talk to Nick and Sarah and get them revised. So move on to the next slide. So these are some better, some examples of a better but not exceptional performance measures, and Nick is going to go into an even better way to do performance measures after this slide. So in this scenario, each year they have chosen to increase. So it says for the year 1, 60% of 5th grade students will complete student portfolios that score satisfactory above on 8 of 10 competencies. So they're stating what percentage of the 5th grade students are telling what grade the students are, what score they need to have on their portfolios, and how many competencies. So these are much more, this performance measure is greatly improved, and it also gives a performance measure for each of the years of the grant. And now,
Yep, so we're gonna
move
turn
on.
it over. Oops, sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, so let's have Nick, and now Nick is going to give just a short description of another way to do performance measures that's even better than this.
Yep. So when the grant was written, we wanted SMART goals, and now 3-4 years later, and the work that the Resource Center has done, we know that there's an even better way to share out performance measures. And Nick from Works is going to go over those with us today. Nick, all you.
Thanks. I never will ever live up to the title you were trying to just give me. But I will take a short minute here. In our work with charter schools around the state, we hope to support them in writing performance measures in their contract, or at least performance measures with their authorizer. As you know, we want charter schools that have the autonomy, in which Michael spoke to earlier, but then we also need to have accountability. And those are clear, transparent performance measures to measure what you do as a charter school that might be a little different than what's going on in the other schools in your community. So very important that you are measuring your unique mission and vision. And let's make sure, and Diane spoke to 3 to 10 performance measures or 4 to 10 performance measures. Let's not say then we also have 4 to 10 with our authorizers, we have 4 to 10 with our community and our parents and our leader, and then we're just chasing performance measures everywhere. And we've all been a part of that. And so we don't know which performance measures we're working on. Let's have one set for everybody. And so I think it makes sense then to take the time and to do them well. So this model is after NACSA, the National Association of Charter Schools in our state. And so we're working through that model, and we provided a document here that's linkable when you get these slides that will walk you step by step, as well as provide you with some performance measures on more of a broader scale that might fit your context. But really we work with indicators, which is, just as Diane was saying, is it what group of students and what do you think is important? Is it math growth with your fifth graders? Awesome. Then what is the measure you're going to use? Is it a particular assessment that is recognized nationally, like an iReady? Okay, great. Or a STAR or a NWA assessment. I don't own any stock in any of those companies, just throwing out ones that are in my head. And then you need to decide on what the metric is. Is it a percentage? Is it a rubric score? And then the target. Is that percentage going to be 85%? Is it going to be 3 out of 4? All 4 of those need to be spelled out, and all 4 of those are a variable to writing a strong performance measure. I do think it is difficult. I would agree with you if it's going through your head right now to measure the real root of your school, why you're designing your school to serve your community. How do we measure that? It's our job to figure out a way to. So when we're in the grocery store explaining to someone why it's important for them to attend, or their child to attend our school, we have measurable data to show that that's what our school is really good at. And our authorizer, when they reauthorize us, know that as well. So if our detailed document that you're able to download in the slides doesn't work for you, please reach out to the Resource Center. We can't write the grant for you, but we can absolutely strategize writing a performance measure for your school.
Awesome. And so what other materials go into the budget summary in Appendix E? All right. So there's a couple of other things with your budget. The big takeaway, there are links in this presentation that I strongly encourage you to look over. And the WCSP, which is the Wisconsin Charter School Program, allowable cost guide is excellent. It's written in plain language. It will tell you about the things you can charge and cannot charge. And as a school developer who helped to develop a school in this grant and in previous grants, I was very surprised at some of the changes. We can buy a vehicle? In previous grants, that was the one thing you could never buy as a vehicle. We can't buy food? How are we supposed to have an open house if we can't buy any food? So if you check out this allowable cost guide before you write your budget summary, I strongly encourage you to do that. I think it will help you and set you further ahead. The other pieces, though, for planning year, it's $150,000, cannot exceed $150,000. Year 5 of the budget cannot be less than 10% of the total award, must not exceed 20% of the total award. So you have some parameters for your final year of funding. The total amount budgeted cannot exceed the total funding available. And expenditures must be consistent with activities described in the grant. There's a slide that's coming, which I'll show you about that. There's another additional requirement. You may choose to include costs associated with travel for the required annual works conference. Part of this grant, you don't have to go to works for anything other than the conference. You need to go to the works conference every year for as long as you are a sub-grantee. And other than that, you get to choose your own consultants. You get to choose who you work with. That sense of local control is definitely in this grant, but there is a requirement that you attend the works conference. And there are other requirements that are built in as well, but that's the one that is connected to your budget. Diane.
Okay, everyone wants to know how much money is available in this grant. And I will tell you, if you are applying for an implementation grant or an implementation with planning grant, there is a base funding amount up to $550,000 available. If you In addition, if you are a school serving 150 or more students, you can add up to $100,000. In addition, if you are serving secondary students, you can add an additional $100,625. And if you are taking a 12-month planning period, you can add an additional $150,000 for a total grant not to exceed $900,000 over the course of 5 years. The grant cannot extend beyond 5 years. If you are applying for an replication or expansion grant, the base funding of amount of $550,000 is the same. And also the same amount for if you are a larger school with 150 students or more, you can request up to $100,000 more. Or if you are a school serving secondary students, you can still request up to $100,625,000 more for a total of $750,000, not to exceed $750,000 over the course of a 5-year grant. You can, if you are taking a planning year for an expansion grant, you can allocate up to $150,000 for planning purposes, but you do not get any additional monies for planning if you are a replication or an expansion grant.
Outstanding. Thank you, Diane. All right, then we get into Appendix F. We are getting towards the end of our alphabet on appendices. So if you were starting to stress and wonder how big is this application, we're coming to the end of it. And this is where you include all of your expenses and revenue for 5 years. You need to show a sustainable operation. You should show realistic expenses and revenues, explain this document in the narrative, and then there's an expense tab and a revenue tab. These two appendices are only for those who are replicating or expanding, and that's where we need to see evidence of high quality. So the Happy Kids reference that we talked about earlier, you really want to showcase your data and the great work that you've been doing and make that very, very clear in these appendices that you turned in or that you turn in. Again, I'm going to just read this one time word for word. I intentionally did it in the previous two, but I think it's important that we hear it. And that's for the 2019-20 school year, provide data through at least March 12, 2020, when an initial state of emergency was declared in response to the COVID-19 threat in Wisconsin. So for 3 years of data, which has always been needed, you're not necessarily going to have, your data is not going to be clean for last school year. We all know why. So you just need to provide the data up till that point. Need to include an authorizer report and have governing board minutes. You are a high performing school. You're rocking it. You're doing great stuff. Let's see your governing board minutes. It needs to be included with your application, and we need to see them for the last 12 months of the charter school's governing board or time. Now we're going to get into some strategies. You're here because you are taking on a very ambitious task of potentially writing a grant to start a new school. And on this call, I mean, I see an expert teacher that I used to work with, and I don't want to call her out, but she was just one of the most amazing teachers I've ever worked with. I also see one of my former bosses on the call. So there are great people on this call. And these are just strategies. You could take them or leave them. But we're going to be here. Diane, Nick, and Sarah and I will go over some things that we know have worked for teams in the past. And if you read other grants, you'll notice some trends as well. Focus on the personnel, the curriculum, your local assessments, your policy development, your budgets and expenditures, and your daily operations. Try to get those pieces into alignment, and that's what you're going to see here. You need to provide a full educational program, have full-time enrolled students. So ask us questions. If something is unclear, fill up my inbox. I have a 24-hour rule. Monday through Friday, I will get back to you within 24 hours. If not, there better be some sort of email responder about, that I'm on vacation or away. We're a responsive team. We get back to you. And so if you have questions, ask. And sometimes my response will be, that is a phenomenal question. I need to take it to my team at our next meeting on Wednesday morning. Expect an answer from me Wednesday afternoon. But you're going to get that level of customer service and support. My predecessor, Chanel Crawford, one of the single most responsive human beings over email, really set the standard high. And so if you have questions, just reach out and ask, and we want to make sure that we are responding to you. And that's really what this slide is about. Another strategy, tell a story. So some reviewers have commented and peer reviewers have said they've gotten halfway through the application and then they finally realize what it's about. Your mission, vision, and values, I mean, you're going to tell us about the why. Why do you want to build this new school in that section 1? But boy, when you're into section 2, really start to articulate the activities and all the different things that you're hoping to do in this great school that you're looking to open. And you want to try to string together into a cohesive narrative. That should be a part of your story. That's how the questions are set up if you look at the first 5 sections. And by the time a peer reviewer gets to section 5, it should really be very, very clear about here's the community, the need, the mission, vision, and values, the activities that they want to do. This is the board that's going to oversee the group and help to push that forward. We know that they're going to go out of their way to include all members in their school. All members are welcomed at their school. This is not an exclusive school. This is an inclusive school meant for everybody. And the budget, well, that's how they're going to pay for everything. And they have a plan to do it. So the grant, if you break it down and codify it, it is set up for you to be able to tell a narrative and a story. Strategies and your performance measures, activities, and budget can also fit together. And I don't want to tell you what your school design is. You know your school design. But how are you going to know that you have a quality design? That's where your performance measures really tell a story. And then the activities that go with that and the budget, those things should be pretty tightly aligned to be pieces to the puzzle. I just think that is a great graph. I don't know, or photo, I don't know if that's from iStock or ClipArt, but it does all fit together. When you read one of the grants that have been funded or really a quality school, you can see the origin story and you can see how all the different pieces fit together. Make sure you explain early on if you are implementation, expansion, or replication. So if you're not doing a planning year, if you're not a new school, get that into section 1 and 2 right away. If I'm going too fast, Nick, Sarah, Diane, you can always interrupt me. You guys know that by now. All right, so I'm going to talk out of both ends of my mouth here, and cut the fluff. All right, I'm going to read this word for word so I don't get on a tangent. Some applicants have been very creative with formatting to squeeze in more words. Please don't, but then used a lot of words on fluff, or even worse, ended up confusing the reviewers. Sometimes less is more. All right. Now, when I said I was going to talk out of the other end of my mouth, sometimes more is more. So when do you need to explain? Well, if answering, you need to answer the question that's asked. And we do tell the reviewers they can look elsewhere for answers, but they are not required to. So some of the answers, I mean, you want to be concise, but sometimes you really do need to explain what you're doing, especially if it's an innovative model, especially if there's a niche group that you are trying to serve because you know that group has not been served in your community before. So there are reasons to explain more. This third bullet point, we just want to point out, and it is a we, it's not an I thing, it's definitely a we. Here on the WCSP team at the department, some questions, they definitely are redundant. They're definitely asked in multiple sections because we have to meet federal requirements. And then, so you can cross-reference and say, please see, section 2.3 for an explanation of that. If you feel like asked and answered, you can redirect people to other sections when it's appropriate. The next two are coupled together. Do not assume something does not apply, especially replication and expansion, and don't fall prey to true believer syndrome. All right? You love your model. You're very passionate about a specific type of teaching and learning. There are people on this call who know that we could get off this call and I could talk student-directed project-based learning or service learning until 3 in the morning and have a good time doing it, and only be the one talking in the conversation. Do not fall victim to that, because even within that model, we know that there are some pieces that those models just don't do well all the time. So it's okay to acknowledge what your model or method doesn't do, and then to get out in front of it and explain how you're going to respond to that. Maybe there's another school or community program that you do plan on working with. Great, articulate it in your grant. So those are a couple pieces. You want to cut the fluff. I think it was Shrunk and White that said, murder your darlings. You really want to be concise. Doom, doom, doom. But you also need to explain what you're going to do at your school and get all that done in 25 pages or less. This one I even wrote on my note today, where I know who's doing what slide. I'm going to take a minute here. It's one of my last few slides. I am tired of hearing the sound of my voice. I imagine all of you are out there as well. Score yourself, hand off the grant to somebody else who is critical, a critical thought partner, not a cheerleader. All right. I would not give one of my grants to my ma. I wouldn't say, hey, ma, can you take this and score it for me? 50, Michael, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. 50, 50. Mom, did you even read it? I would give my grant application to my wife and say, can you please score this? That's a critical thought partner. She's an art teacher. She's going to break it down. She's going to tell me what doesn't make sense, what's unclear, and it might come back with a 28 or a 29 out of 50. So score yourself. Have a critical thought partner score it for you. So as I'm explaining these pieces now, I'm not saying this to scare you, but you can do it section by section. I strongly encourage you, once you get done with section 1 and 2, send it out. Send it out to people who are going to give you feedback. And darn it, if you have college friends or grad school friends, send it to them. Send it to other people who like to do this for fun, to get that feedback that you need. And I got a little on a tangent and passionate about that one, but I just think that there's a lot of value in this, and we've had some grant applications that have been close. And I just want to say on the call, I've been on both sides of this grant. I submitted in year 1 as a school developer and failed. And it was like a punch in the stomach when you get it back. You're like, oh, but then going back, taking that feedback to the next year and putting it in and getting successfully funded, that's where I am a true believer in the skeptical reviewer, because I think if you get feedback, you can respond. And so I've gone enough on that one. But this form out here on the right, this is a screenshot of the grant reviewer form, and it's on our website, guys. So just go out there and take a look. It's a pretty darn good form. It shows exactly how you'll be broken down. It's a good rubric. All right, explain your process. This one's still me, I promise. I'm wrapping up here. But instead of saying we have no remaining barriers to equal access, say this: we examine barriers to equal access by and continue to work to address them as follows. So we examine barriers to equal access by providing a survey to parents at an open house night, by sending a survey home with our additional remote learning surveys, by doing this, by doing that, and here's how we're going to address them. All right, you really want to explain your processes because they are unique to your local environment and the schoolhouse you are trying to design. We understand that. The peer reviewers understand that. So explain your processes. Do not assume that we know your processes. Explain them here. And then finally, connect the dots. I think you've been on this call for over an hour, and for those of you who have worked with me in the past, I'm a pretty simple guy. So you really got to connect the dots so that I can read your grant and understand what you want to do in the school. But it's not about me. It's also about peer reviewers, because this grant is going to be handed off to people who do not know you and who are going to run through this rubric right here. You want to make sure that everything is very, very well connected, and make sure that you explain the data and the appendices in your narrative. Don't just rely on the appendices to do the talking for you. All right, you've got those 25 pages, and I'm guys, I'm not trying to be condescending, but I really think you want to take time in the narrative to explain what's in those appendices. And I'm saying that because not every grant application has. And so anytime we have a strategy slide, we're really trying to help those out who and taking the learning that's happened previously. Oh, this is the beautiful one. I think I'm going to get rid of the other one and just use this one going forward. So which one's better, guys? Take a moment of think time and read that quietly to yourself as I mute myself and drink some water here. So 10 seconds of reading time. All right. Which one's better, the top one or the bottom one? If for those of us who have screens on, just show the top one's better or the bottom one's better. So it's thumbs down, good? Yeah, yeah, it's so much better. Hey, thanks, Jacob. Thanks for jumping in there and showing, appreciate that. Yeah, we surveyed the community and determined through survey responses that 102 educationally disadvantaged students are likely to submit an application to attend the charter school. So much better, right? So much better. Then we are going to serve over 100 educationally disadvantaged students. How can you guarantee that in an imaginary school that doesn't exist yet? Come on now. All right, I am now going to turn it over to Sarah and Nick, our friends and colleagues over at the Wisconsin Resource for Charter School. Eventually, I'm going to get the acronym to works right when I just look at it.
It's been years and I still don't always get it.
Thanks for making me feel better.
For charter schools, yeah. We abbreviate ourselves WRCCS or WORKS, and so you'll hear us refer to WORKS. We are here to support you and all the people that you work with on the charter stuff. So we do supports for charter school authorizers and potential authorizers. We work with design teams, and eventually they often turn into governance boards. We then work with governance boards, and then we work at the school level with leaders and teachers. And we also have resources available to help educate the community, just like what is a charter school and what does this all mean and how does it work and the funding and all that stuff. So really we're here to support, and it's all funded through the grant. So we have a lot to give. We have a lot of online resources, and then we're available to support you as well. And I do see a lot of familiar faces on the call today, so it's nice that we've already, started some of that support even as you're coming into this process. So that's, I think, the most important thing to know is that we're here and we'd like you to reach out. But then we do have some more formal things in place. We do work with the subgrantees, and we can talk through what some of that looks like if you were to get funded. But I think more importantly, we'd like to help you now at these early stages. And so we have a link to our charter school design hyperdoc in this slide. And maybe that'd be a good place for Nick to just sort of talk through some of the stuff that's in there, or why you might want to go there. Oh, and thanks, putting it in the chat's a good call.
Do you want me to take people there right now and refresh my screen?
No, it's fine. They can open the link. Otherwise, they'll be getting this afterwards. But Nick, do you have a couple highlights you might want to point out?
Yeah, sure. So I did put the link in the chat, and it will be in the slideshow as well. that hyperdoc really helps take you through sort of figuring out, first of all, what is a charter school? So there's some nice links in there that is helping ground you in what a charter school is and hopefully what a charter school is not. And then it goes into just the design process of a charter school. It's not fully intended to help write the grant for you. It's really there to help you process what are the key components of a successful charter school and the process in which to design that. Maybe a lot of strategizing and going through that process will help you write the grant. But Sarah and I always want to make sure that when we get on these calls, you understand you can start a charter school without the grant. So we're on a call here to learn about, sure, you're starting a charter school. Of course, you want some capacity building funds to help reach the full potential of your charter school. But you're not applying to DPI for your charter school. You're finding an authorizer for that. So the design document kind of helps spell that out as well. So you're welcome to use any of the links that are in there. You'll notice if you revisit it, it is getting updated as we update our own resources. And then last, as you scroll down in there, please reach out to us. There's a specific link at the bottom of that for personalized support that goes right to our emails, and we know that we can reach out to you and help answer questions through as you discover areas in which you might want more assistance.
Yeah, great. And then I'll just talk about a couple more things on this slide before we move on. So I think, Nick's right. A big part of what we do is work with schools and design teams that are not part of the grant program. And so do know that we're here for you, but also we work closely with the schools who are part of the grant program. And so part of what we do is they're involved in our mentorship program. We have professional learning networks within that mentor program now. We put on an annual conference, which last year was virtual. I haven't announced next summer's conference yet, but when we do, you'll hear about that. And then we also work through a bunch of more kind of tangible requirements where you have to record the professional development that your school is working on while you're a grantee. And so we help you do that through a project management tool and kind of help you set some goals using our competencies. So it's a much more structured way that we support the subgrantees. And then we also ensure that someone on the team completes the Promoting Excellence for All course through the DPI resources. So there's just some more concrete things that we do with the subgrantees, with all the subgrantees. Now, a lot of that stuff is also open to everyone. So if you don't get funded, you still can set up action plans and use our competencies to set goals and do your work. You still are welcome at our conference. You still can access the PIFA course, join our professional learning networks. All these things that we offer are open to all. It's just much more concretely measured with the subgrantees.
Awesome. And so we have hit, I believe we hit, yep, we have hit the time in the presentation where I am going to stop the recording. So thank you for being here in virtual world. If you are watching this and it's not live, and follow up with questions,